Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, or whatever form you choose to fellowship and worship. We on CAPtions wish you the very best. I'd like to share a few words with you before we get our show underway from some very famous Americans. It ought to be possible for an American consumer of any color to receive equal services in places of public accommodations, such as hotels, restaurants, theaters, retail stores, without being forced to resort to demonstrations in the streets. It ought to be possible for an American citizen of any color to register and vote in a free election without fear of a reprisal. I wonder, did he have rumors in mind? You know, the Negro baby born in America today, regardless of the section of the nation in which he is born, has about half as much a chance of completing high school as a white baby born in the same place on the same day, and 1/3 as much a chance of becoming a professional man, twice as much of a chance of becoming unemployed, and about 1/7 as much a chance of earning $10,000 a year, and a life expectancy which is 7 years shorter than his white counterpart. These are not legal issues. These are moral issues. And what we're primarily confronted with is an issue as old as the scripture itself and far older than our Constitution. You see, we preach freedom around the world, and our president would have us believe that we mean it. And many of us who vote, who pay taxes, who fight, live and die struggling for freedom every day, we do believe it. And we cherish our freedom here at home. But we say to the world, and much more importantly, we say to each other, this land of freedom is free except for Negroes. That we have no second-class citizens except for Negroes. We have no class system, no caste system, no ghettos, no master race, except with respect to Negroes. You see, we face a moral crisis as a country and as a people. And it cannot be met by repressive police action. For you see, we are at a point now where we must think and hearken back to the words of Dwight Eisenhower. Has the police risen above the law? Have those forces that were put in place to protect us become something we need be concerned about being protected from? You know, the words I'm sharing with you now were words taken from two great men's speeches just 5 months before they departed this land. President Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King. And as we in Peoria seem to be grappling with the question of a serious moral crisis, we're going to bring up some footage that makes me hearken back to moments where I knew we were in a serious moral crisis in Peoria.
Whether we can get it stopped or not We're going to try and we're going to talk from everybody all the way to Washington, D.C. on this project.
That heated discussion was prompted today when a petition with more than 260 signatures was filed with the Peoria County Board. Residents near Hannah City don't want to see a 20-acre community garden project near them, now being developed by the Community Action Agency. The CAA is pumping in more than $46,000 in federal money to get the project off the ground. Many residents complain their property will devalue, like this man says, because blacks will be using the land.
I figure I've lost half the value of my land just for what's been in the paper so far.
Why?
Because you won't be able to sell it to anybody.
Oh, I think that racial problems in America is nothing new. I think through collective work and harmony we've been able to overcome them, and I think we'll overcome them in this instance too.
The petition complains a public hearing wasn't held on the land's use, that the small entrance may pose traffic problems, that water and toilet facilities are inadequate. Peoria County's Environmental Matters Committee voted to refer the complaints to the Health Department. Since it can do nothing, there is no zoning problem. The Illinois Department of Transportation is also looking into the matter. The Community Action Agency has a lot to prove now, that the garden project is environmentally safe, that it poses no traffic hazard, and that having blacks out here in this area won't devalue the property of nearby residents. Michael Banks says he stands on firm ground. Near Hannah City, Karen Hoyer, News 25.
You know, it's interesting that as we reflect back, and if you take a look at the scenery there in this piece of farm footage, being a kid coming from south side of Chicago public housing projects, that was more grass, more greenery than I'd ever seen in my entire life. But as we take a closer look, that is something that I had never seen. I mean, to walk out there and find death to all niggas painted on our barn, and all we wanted to do was feed people, it angered me, you know, and it was during a period where I guess I was still learning what we call controlled rage and how to point it in a positive direction. And I guess it's just fortunate that the people were so committed. I remember when we, as you can see now, we cleared the land and we began to put the plots together. There was a grandmother on her knees setting out, I guess you would call them, tomato plants. And she said to me, she said, son, she said, don't you worry about them signs. She said, I quit being scared when I left Mississippi. She said, ain't nothing up north scare me now but the price of food, and I ain't got enough money. That's when I get scared. I had never seen a noose tied to a tree. You know, this, I guess, was supposed to frighten us. This is up south in Peoria, Illinois, central Illinois, the footage that we're looking at. But thanks to men like John Colgan, McFarland BRAGG, and sisters like Joanne Knight and others who were here with us, who were the dreamers. You know, they used to tell me, oh, Banks, you dreaming. And then people gonna own a 40-acre farm. If you didn't get 40 acres and a mule back then, what makes you think you're gonna get it now? But certainly, I think we've come through that kind of thing. I was investigated. I was accused of some sort of crime. And somehow back then, it didn't seem to bother me as much. It didn't trouble me. I expected confrontation, but somehow it didn't reach into the living room, the dining room, and the bedroom of my home and impact my children the way it does, because you know, I was kind of macho, and as far as I was concerned, young boys had to learn how to be tough. So if we have a little problem here, I just walk through it with him. But I'm still chauvinistic, you know. I don't think that my daughter should have to be asked whether the things they're saying about a father in the paper are true. And to have her, if she comes home and I'm not there, frightened that I'm gone. But this program really isn't about focusing on the recent events. What I'd like to talk about is what CAPs have been doing all the time. Why we were given birth, why Lyndon Johnson signed the Economic Opportunity Act, to help clear up some of the misconceptions in the minds of the people about a community action agency. It's not a Southside program for the colored folk.
Why do you think that it's thought of that way? And
well, I'm positive that I know why it's thought of that way. You see, at the federal level, initially under the Carter administration, Ford, Kennedy, Johnson, up until Nixon, it was thought that what we would do is create programs where the federal government could intervene where maybe local communities couldn't, and be a catalyst to provide solutions to solve local problems, okay? Now, one who is a student of American government and American politics must also remember, as we go back into those years of the 60s, the message that went out across the nation to blacks. I think Malcolm X said it when he said, our battle will be at the ballot box or it will be with bullets. Dr. King said it best when he said, obviously, bullets are not the answer. You see, this country has a enormous capacity to change the rules in the middle of the game. It has an enormous facility for looking 20 years down the road and being able to mold and manipulate public opinion so that once the black community said, oh, we can vote, we can elect people that will do our bidding in seats of government, okay? Well, certainly one of the catalytic entities that was waking up poor folk, poor black folk, poor white folk, poor Indians, was that agency that was helping them know where to go get their food stamps, know where to go get some housing services, know where to go get a job. They was also asking them, are you a registered voter? If you don't participate in government, then you don't have a right to complain about what government does to you. So, not just CAP agencies, obviously, there were others, the NAACP, the Urban League, but the message became a national message. So black people began to get the notion that they had power. You know, I remember, see, the people who are in power, they always want the oppressed to believe that now is forever.
Okay.
Okay? Because certainly that means they'll be oppressed forever.
They'll be
in power
forever.
Okay?
Okay.
So what began to happen in the South, we saw Reverend Jackson give us the inspiration and give us the fire and give us the tools to go to the ballot boxes and to begin to elect people of our own kind and our own commitment and our own persuasion. Frequently, we saw the system buy those people off, manipulate them against us. The modern Uncle Toms, if you will, begin to surface. But nonetheless, the people were waking up. So then a term came into being. Most of us, we didn't even know what it meant.
I want you to elaborate more on the modern Uncle Tom. What's he like?
Well, the modern day Uncle Tom is a throwback to the house Negro
Okay.
during slavery. He slept in the house like the master did. He ate well like the master did. He understood the language of the master and the slave.
Okay.
You see, because the slave developed their own language, just like the slaves today stand out on the corner talking about what's up, and some person not familiar with the language may start staring up in the sky, not understanding that that was simply a way of saying hello, what's happening, como está usted, habaragani, or some of the other phrases that are used as greetings. The other thing is the modern day Uncle Tom tends to be one who is prepared to operate at the disinterest of the majority of his own culture. Now that might be because he doesn't know any better. That might be because he's in need of a job. That might be because he wants to get invited to a certain Christmas party. It might be that he wants to impress a certain Caucasian lady.
Okay.
There are thousands of reasons, and I guess that it would depend upon the person. But nonetheless, they tend to be unwilling to risk the security that they have found inside the house, because they remember life out in the fields. Okay. So I think that is what we saw happen. Okay. Then let me take you a step further with the historical development. So blacks, contrary to the amazement of the sophisticated political analysts, begin to register in mass numbers, and they were a more dedicated, more loyal, more committed voter than their white counterpart. Even though you continue to hear about blacks don't vote, studies have proven if you just go up to Chicago, which is just a few miles up the road, you will find that blacks outvoted whites. Okay? So when blacks began to grab hold to this rope of freedom, and they were re-energized with the hope that maybe America was going to live up to the American dream. I wanted to make this point about new federalism because it was introduced to us by President Nixon.
Okay.
It had been carried out by President Reagan. And it was put on hold by President Ford. Okay. What new federalism said, and it sounded so good to us, it said, those folks sitting in Washington, they don't know how to spend our tax money. So we're going to quit funding these programs in Washington, and we're going to bring the money closer to the people. We're going to bring it to the governor. Well, ironically, at the time that revolution, that profound sense of wisdom was thrown out to America, it was 260 black mayors who were the recipient of those federal grants, and there were 0 black governors. Now, we never really looked at it like that, because if they start telling you, we're going to bring the money closer to home so y'all can do what you need and you can have the things you want, and so many of us were dissatisfied with things that had gone wrong in Washington that, well, might make just a little sense. Okay? Never thinking that what it really meant was the millions of dollars that Harold Washington would have had to be able to direct them to the needs of his community he no longer has. He has to go and discuss it with Governor Thompson now. Okay? And so that became the phenomenon all over the country. We learned the game, go to Washington, get to the White House, put somebody in Congress to represent you, have them create legislation that'll bring your money back and fill your needs. And now, you gotta go to Springfield. Okay? So, the black person's never-ending love for America, I'm talking about a deep, burnt, indelibly printed in our mind, our love for this country, we still didn't give up and say, ain't gonna be no freedom. We started looking to our state capital. But unfortunately, our state capitals are controlled typically by white men and rural legislatures. Okay? So the black agenda got put on the back burner again. While at the same time, the women's movement began to take shape, form, and focus, and the civil rights movement, you didn't hear much about the civil rights movement, but you heard a lot about the women's movement. So the community action agency in the local neighborhood that used to help white folks find black men jobs would get a phone call, hello there, Mr. Banks. We really we're an equal opportunity employer, and we're in need of a minority. Do you have any black women? Because you see now, the brother could, when they came around, he could say, well, I hired me 2 minorities. I hired me a woman, and I hired me a black. And then with the women's movement going on TV and radio and all over the country, and the black woman going out earning a paycheck, she come home and there's a black man who is struggling with self-esteem, who is struggling with not being able to take care of his own children, contrary to the belief that black men don't care about their children, who's struggling with the fact that if he stay there, he can't get a job, but if he leave, his wife can get on public aid if she can't get a job. Okay. And then we want to know why our people want to escape to drugs, to alcohol, why the jails are full of people of color. Why is it that we are not pulling our load? And we get so tricked by amnesia, see, that we begin to believe it because somebody keeps printing it, somebody keeps saying it, somebody keeps telling it to you from the time you're this big to by the time you grow up. You believe it. You believe you're not supposed to mountainize. You don't even think about being a nuclear physicist, let alone the president of commercial bank. You don't think about those things because you're not supposed to become those things because you've been told. I didn't even know what a broken home was till some white folks told me that if your daddy and your mama get a divorce and your mother raised you, that's a broken home.
Okay.
Because I didn't know my home was broke. It didn't feel broke. Me and my sisters and brothers and my mama, we was all happy. You know, Christmas came, we had us a little something under the tree. We didn't know our house was broke. But then white folk began to tell us our houses is broke. We didn't know that black women couldn't raise a black family. My mama was doing it with a big strap, okay? My aunties, I mean, we didn't know nothing was wrong with us. I didn't even know that when we moved into the projects, because the house we was living in was, they said, y'all got to move out of here. No human beings will live here, and they put a sign up, right?
Okay.
So we moved into the projects. Concrete floor, carpet. You know, everybody had a bedroom. It was brick. We thought we had just moved into a motel. We was downtown. And then we got to school and found out we was living in something called the projects. What I'm saying to you, in short, is that signs, symbols, images, they control our minds. They control our dreams. They control our destinies. And if you're able to convince a young kid that what he really need to be doing is driving a Cadillac, and he need to be finding him 2 or 3 girls that's on public aid and get $20, $30 a piece from them, and that what he really be ought to approach as a profession is that thing called hustling. And then you put it in his living room on TV, and he winds up becoming just that, and you imprison him. You know, they got this 1 to 3. 1 to 3 is just long enough to learn you how to get 33, because you're there just long enough to, it's like, I have a friend of mine, he says it's an old Lebanese saying, it's better to swing a big stick than to use it because once you hit me with a stick, if it don't kill me, I know I can handle it.
Yeah.
So once you lock our children up for a few years, telling them about going to jail, all you've convinced them is, I can handle it. You don't rehabilitate them there.
Okay.
You don't create a new life for them there. And in terms of the Community Action Agency, it was intended to be the moral conscience of America. It was intended to say the things that the lady with a third grade education was afraid to go downtown and stand up against the white man and speak her piece because he was going to use them 50-cent words, and she wasn't going to know what he was talking about and be embarrassed.
Okay.
Head Start was not intended just to teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was to teach their mama, you go up to school and see about that child. Okay, so the Community Action Agency was not designed to be popular by the people in power. It wasn't designed to sit by quietly and say, well, if you all want those people in Southtown to just live like dogs and animals and be abused, we'll just sit right over here, massa, and wait till y'all send us another check. That is not why we were put here. We were put here for two purposes. One was to make poverty in America and human suffering more tolerable, more humane, like the Christian society that many of us claim we are, to be our brother's keeper.
Okay.
Okay? And then we were to be an innovative advocate for solutions of structural poverty. In other words, why pay an electrician $8, $10, $12 an hour to change the fuse of the lady across the street in the projects than teach some of the kids in the projects how to do it and pay them $3 or $4 an hour? Unpopular, but a solution to youth unemployment and to bring the cost of housing our poor people and saving our tax dollars. I see I'm getting time cues. We're going to have to take a break for a short message, and we'll be right back with more on Captions right after this.
Welcome back. And if you just turned on your television set, you're watching Captions. And my name is Audrey Pentecost, sitting here with our Executive Director of the Community Action Agency, Mr. Michael E. Banks, and being enlightened and astonished in a lot of things that are coming forth. You know, I mentioned earlier, I want to know more about the Community Action Agency in the state of Illinois, because usually when you think of, well, usually it's like a stigma, even with welfare. Most people think of blacks, or, you know, they want to paint that picture that only blacks are on welfare, or poverty type of programs such as Community Action Agency, just think of it's a black program. Why is that? I really want to know why.
All right. Let me just give you my own personal opinion why that is. One, because the media and the politicians join hands in a conspiracy. And that conspiracy says, for time immemorial, we have struggled with what has been known as the battle between guns and butter. Are we going to pour all of our resources to butter, bread, food, clothing, housing, taking care of the American people? Or are we going to put our resources into guns? Okay?
Okay.
And there's only so many dollars to go around, so naturally, when they start making those hard choices of guns versus butter, okay, somebody's got to lose. Now, the American electorate, which is predominantly white, and for a long time, the voters were majority white and were conscientious voters. Okay? So if you told white America, we need to go to the moon, because it might be somebody up on the moon that's going to do something to us down here. And so instead of us buying more butter for these black people, we are going to go to the moon.
Okay.
Okay? So then we went to the moon. Okay?
All right.
Now, if you take that and begin to bring that closer to home, and if you begin to say, well, this Office of Economic Opportunity and these community action agencies and these programs for the poor, these programs is the reason we got a deficit. These programs are the reasons your taxes is so high. What we really need is another Trident submarine. And you know that missile that we made that could knock a missile out the air? We need to make another missile that could knock that missile out the air in case that missile missed. Okay? Now, the American voter gets kind of smart after a while, and they say, well, now, we got enough missiles to blow up America 1,000,000 times and the world over. Why do we keep needing to put money in defense? Why can't we create jobs for people? Why can't we do something about welfare? But if you can convince them that welfare is just some lazy black women that don't want no job, that just want to sit home and watch television, and we don't need no training programs for them, and we don't need no more programs for them, because them is just some black folk that don't want nothing. And you just be throwing, you heard this term, throwing good money after bad. We just be throwing our good money after bad. So after a while, white folks said, well, ain't no sense in throwing good money after bad, especially here in Peoria. But see, at that time, Caterpillar was hiring everybody white that needed a job. Okay? So that problem wasn't so close to home. And when you start talking about feeding the elderly, well, their grandmama didn't need no meal. So they were able to paint it black, which meant that the nation would accept its extermination. And then Nixon, one of his first official acts when he took office, was to order the dismantling of the 900 community action agencies in America. Okay? He did it illegally, just as he did a lot of other things illegally during his presidency. And, you know, I'm sorry if you are a Nixon fan out there, but I've been asked to tell the truth. So we rallied around the country, poor folks, people of compassion and love. You know what we found out? We found out that it was more poor white folk than black folk. We found out that it was 10 times more poor white folk than black folk. And we found out that poverty, you know, hunger pains, it didn't just come into the community and get inside a black stomach and then skip over a white stomach. We found malnutrition was in black kids, even though all you see on TV is just little black Africans with their stomach poked out. they won't show you them pictures in Appalachia of them little white kids with their stomach poked out, because then you might start caring about everybody.
Okay.
And so it was an attempt to play on the minds of the people.
Okay.
In the state of Illinois, there are 32 community action agencies. 7 or 8 of them may have had black directors. The last 5 black directors have lost their jobs, and those agencies have been closed.
Is that right?
And it has a lot to do with the dollars that come into the community. See, we have to look at it like they look at it. You read in the paper maybe that the Peoria Community Action Agency gets $2.5 million. And to a lot of black folks sitting at home, and quite a few white folks, that sounds like a whole lot of money. But to a banker who done said, well, now he been down there for 15 years, 3 times 15, that's $45 million. $45 million is a little bit more to talk about than 2.5. The part that they didn't put in the paper was that $1 million a year goes in the form of paychecks. You know, somebody got a paycheck for doing something. I didn't say a welfare check.
Paycheck.
A paycheck. You work around here, you know it ain't welfare.
That's right.
Okay.
You better believe it.
All right. Sometimes it's after hours.
This is true.
Okay, and it's Saturday and it's Sunday and it's whatever it takes to help the people.
That's right.
But $1 million of those dollars are paychecks that provides food, clothing, shelter, and keeps the businesses of this community, the small businessman in business. So one reason they had to do that with the poor folks program was color. There's a couple of other things I would like to quote for you here that I think may also help understand why poverty programs come under attack the way they do.
Okay.
You noticed, you might read about $50,000 getting embezzled from a bank, but you ain't never seen the bank president on the front page of the paper.
This is true.
You didn't never see the story on the front page of the paper.
This is also
Okay.
true.
See, here's the thing about people, poor folk. One thing is this: in the minds of the people with money, poor people do not count. In no government on the face of this earth have poor people counted in the scheme of things, their needs or their opinions. Not just America, no people who control government are poor people counted. They don't have a meeting and say, oh, wait a minute, what do the poor people think? They don't do that. They say, well, wait a minute, what do the people with money think? That's number one. Number two, poor folks have always counted for cannon fodder. Let me explain that word now. When I say cannon fodder, for war machines. In other words, okay, poor folks is going to be the one that's going to get sent to Vietnam, that's going to get sent to Lebanon. The majority of the folk who live, fight, and die for freedom is not the 60 and 70-year-old men that started the war. The guy that's helping get the money to over here and also helping this, you know, if we look at just what we see on the news now, they're talking about, well, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50. We don't know how many million, but some millions went to the Contras, and I take the Fifth Amendment, and if you ask me any more about it, you're violating my constitutional right. Then you find some other guy, he's helping Iraq, okay? So it's kind of like in Peoria, if you could get one black faction and you help it, and another black faction, same guy, help it, and step back and say, well, when they need some more guns, we'll sell it to them. If they want to borrow some money, it's a money business. It's not a people business. Okay? All right? Now let's talk about where poor folk count. This is where they count.
Okay.
Whenever and wherever there are votes to be counted, poor folk have always counted as necessary fodder for the political machine. Okay? Now, we got an election coming up, right? People just filed new city councilman we supposed to elect. Maybe it's 10,000 votes on the south side. They 10,000 poll votes is what they are. Okay? The majority of them is poll votes.
Okay.
Okay? So the first thing we got to do is draw a line and say, it's 5,000 poll white votes and it's 5,000 poll black votes, see? And we're going to say the blacks against the whites, and we don't have to worry about them 10,000 getting nothing. Okay? Then, them 5,000 black votes, we're going to find us somebody to help split them 5,000 black votes up into 2,500 black votes and 2,500 black votes. And you know what, 25, see, this is what we don't understand. If you could get 2,500 people to vote against something, and 2,500 people to vote for something, 2,500 from 2,500 leaves zero.
That's true.
Okay?
Cancels out.
It cancels out.
Yeah.
All right? So that is the game that's played with poor folks. That's why it's painted a black problem. They don't talk about the millions of dollars that go to the people to send the money to the poor folk. You haven't read an article in the front page of the paper about the head of the Department of Commerce and Community Affairs resigning because there was a $140,000 slush fund found. You haven't read anything about the $3,500 worth of dolls that was brought from a relative's store to pass out to tourists coming to Illinois. Those things don't make the front page.
But you made the front page. Could you talk about that now?
No, I really can't talk about me making the front page. Because in one sense, I was in glorious company. Because Harold Washington was there beside me.
This is true.
Okay? And that's all I can really say about it. Okay? Me being on the front page is not important. I think the truth will come out. I think that the Journal Star will hire the best attorneys money can buy. And I'm going to hire the best attorney I can buy and ask the rest of y'all for your prayers.
Okay? Got mine.
Okay? And then we're going to let that take care of itself. What I want to talk about is some good news, okay? For those of you out there today, despite all you may have heard about the Community Action Agency, we're alive and well. We have one of the best staffs of any agency that I know of, and I've been around this business for about 15 years. So it isn't about who's sitting in the chair at the back desk. It's about who's sitting in all of the chairs giving you the services. We recently received an additional $52,000 this morning to help pay light bills. So some of the people who we had to say no to, we'll be able to say yes to. That's what's important to me, not who's on the front page of the paper. Certainly I would like to see us get the same kind of thrill out of sending $50 million into our communities to take care of our people, and we would get out of sending it to Iran. Unfortunately, my letter to the president I didn't get it back with an answer. Okay, let's talk about the Head Start program where we have 400 youngsters who are being taken care of, who are learning the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. And you know, we even getting sophisticated now. We got them over there learning them computers a little bit so that they can't leave out of here and walk into that classroom and that computer frightens them. Let's talk about our homeless program for those who have found themselves in a position where they don't have a home to go to, where we've been able to provide food and shelter. Let's talk about the 15 or 20 young people who can walk into a TV station and say, yes, I know what that camera is and I know how it operates, and I learned it at the Community Action Agency, and I'm interested in a job. Those are the things that I want to talk about, okay? I want us to be able to look beyond the message that they've put out there for you to watch. I got people that used to break their neck waving at me in the grocery store. Hi, Mr. Banks. And now when they see me, they kind of ease on over like, well, maybe somebody's wife gonna take my picture. I had a pastor who I used to pray with regularly tell me, I can't get my name involved in that mess.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm praying for him. I really am praying for him because, you know, if it wasn't no mess on earth, pastors might be out of a job.
This is true.
So I'm going to pray for that, brother. I'm really going to pray for that, brother. And I want us not to be too quick to judge our brothers across the street. You know, it's easy to talk about what happened when so-and-so was here, and something happened when so-and-so was there. And you read a little bit, and you don't get the whole story. If I were you, I would leave that up to people with more power than you and I to bring that thing around to where it's supposed to be. I wouldn't be so quick to judge. You see, we have so little love in our heart for each other that it has been extremely difficult for us to give it out to our fellow man, be they black, be they white. You know, I'm actually praying for some people today in hopes that they will understand that the role of the media, whether it's captions, whether it is a newspaper, whether it is TV, is not simply to take all you can get, can all you get, and sit on your can. But to reach out, give a little love. And as this holiday season grows near, as this program comes to you on Christmas Eve, I have nothing but a heart full of thanksgiving and joy because I have had staff, friends. I'm afraid to send letters of thank you because there's no way that I could thank everybody. So would you do me a favor? For those of you within the sound of my voice tonight, would you call somebody? Would you tell somebody, Michael Banks and the staff at the Community Action Agency says Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We love you and thanks for everything you've done, because in spite of everything they've done to turn you against us, you've stuck by us when we needed you most. And you know without me saying, a lot of people say they with you through thick and thin, but when it get too thick, they thin out. With that, I'm going to close. This has been Mike Banks and Captions. Good evening.
that impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to Southland and to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to strive when our arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, New Southtown. No matter how hopeless, it'll never happen. No matter how far, to fight for the right, feed the hungry, without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause, to be willing to give when there's no more to give, to be willing, like Martin Luther King Jr., to be willing to die so that honor and justice might live. And I know if we'll only be true to this glorious quest, that Martin's heart will lie peaceful and calm when you're through, where though he's laid to his rest, and the world, and Peoria and Illinois and the United States, the world will be better for this. That one man, one woman, boy, one girl, scorned and covered with scars,